Okay, so we are coming along to the end of the course here. We have a couple more videos, but I'm going to try to actually go through these much faster. I spent a lot of time going over very specific things, showing how things sound inside surrounds, rear surrounds. And I've also done my best to duplicate or replicate that experience for people listening on headphones. One thing I want to make note of, and this is an oversight on my part, but I'm not really overly concerned about it, is when I started off this course, I had all of my metadata set to binaural mode off. I haven't been constantly monitoring over headphones. And as you may or may not know, the binaural modes you set in your Dolby Atmos Renderer, they don't apply for the room. They only apply for the Dolby Atmos Renderer headphones. So for some of these new things that we've added, like for example, the keys, the electric guitars and things like that, their binaural mode has been set to mid. I don't think that's a huge deal. I'm not going to really worry about that too much. One other thing I want to make note of is I did notice that I actually forgot one background vocal when we printed our stem. So I've gone ahead and reprinted that. If we take a look over here, and we take a look at this one right over here, background vocal 3, I've just actually copied the effect sends. So these two tracks over here, this is what we're hearing now. And I'll play that really quickly.
Pitchback was the governor.
Now, if I activate the sends,
Pitchback was the governor.
so that's just something I wanted to make note of, and that's an oversight on my part. This is just like two tracks that were kind of sitting outside everything. Now, in terms of how I want to route these, I'm really not going to get overly complicated with it. I think that if we were to open this up, and let's have a quick listen.
Pitchback was the governor.
Maybe just spreading them out a little bit. I think that's fine. If we need to readjust these, we'll tweak those later. But the one thing that I want to take a look at in this video is I want to take a look at doing some automation. And for that, we need to scroll to, where is it over here? Let me go to my bird's eye view. I believe it's this one right over here. So this is the crowd. And I mentioned at the very beginning that I hear something cool happening for this. Let's take a quick listen. Right now, this is routed to the bed, so 7.1.4. If we take a listen. When I first was thinking about Dolby Atmos, the first thought that went into my mind is just things flying everywhere. As you kind of move further along, you realize that that's not what you want. Dolby Atmos and mixing spatial audio or mixing an immersive is very much about just placing things in a very specific point and coming up with something that sounds cohesive and immersive. You can have a little bit of wiggle room with certain elements, but it's not a gimmicky thing where in real life, things aren't flying around your head all the time. That being said, I do want to include at least one portion where we do something, let's call it Atmos-y or something like that. So for this one over here, I'm hearing something very, very simple. The very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click the pan fader, and let's change this to a spatial object panner. So now we have a spatial object panner. Okay, I'm also going to toggle over to my Studio One remote in my iPad. So we'll go to the Studio One remote. And now we have this toggled. So let's just rehearse something in context of the song. What I think is for this section, I just want to have it like slowly traveling around, and then we'll see how the height sounds. I'm not going to automate yet. Let's just do a rehearsal pass. Actually, I probably could have written that as automation. So let's just reset that. And we're going to do that one more time, but this time we're going to write it. In terms of the automation mode you want, well, it depends what you want to do. Usually I work in touch, but for this one, I could leave it in latch. So it would leave off exactly where I left off, or I could set it to write. I think what I'll probably do is I'm just going to set this to write. And let's go ahead and just play this. And then we'll do another pass where we will probably go in touch mode, and I'm going to mess around with the elevation. Okay, That was pretty easy. That was pretty simple. The only other thing that I might consider doing is let's see how it sounds if we bring in some actual height into the equation. So for this, I'm actually using the iPad remote. I really like this because it gives us a really quick and easy way to be able to adjust the height. And I could do this with mouse clicking here as well. It doesn't really matter. Let's just actually, first of all, before we do anything, I'm going to put this into solo mode. And let's go into read mode, and I'm going to do just a rehearsal to see how it sounds with the height speakers. Okay, I think I've got an idea in mind. I'm going to keep it very, let's call it relatively neutral. We'll go back into touch mode, and we're going to play from the beginning, and I'm going to do this in context of the whole track. So we'll come out of solo. Okay, I think I'm going to be pretty happy with that. So now that this is done, we can put this track into read mode. So this has written multiple lanes of automation that we have available. And now every time this plays back, it's going to play back with the automation that we had in place here. Let's expand this out a little bit, and we'll leave this automation view. I don't think we need to revisit this, and I very much like performing automation. Okay, so I'm happy with that. I think that we should move on. And the next thing that I want to do is I'm actually going to mute my mains. So I'm going to click the mute, and in ground control sphere, I have basically 2 keyboard shortcuts for dim and mute. Let's mute our actual ground control sphere. So my mains are not going to be coming out. And now we're going to throw on some headphones, and I am actually going to be listening on headphones. We're going to take a look at the binaural rendering modes in terms of the metadata that we set for the beds and the individual objects. In addition to that, I also want to take a look at maybe rebalancing. I've heard some areas where our stereo reference is a lot more powerful in terms of low end and brightness too. So I want to take a look at that, but I'm going to do that actually with headphones. So I'm going to pop on my headphones. In this case, let me give myself a little bit of volume. In this case, I am actually going to be using my Olo Audio S4Xs, and we're going to do 2 things here. The first thing that I want to do is just check out the binaural metadata modes. If we hear anything between the stereo and the actual Atmos mix, and we need to readjust to make certain elements brighter or control the peaks, we will do that. But also we're going to check out working with Apple Spatial Audio, which is natively integrated directly into Studio One. So in terms of my view, in my fader port, I'm going to go into the VCA view really quickly. Now, I'm going to go back to the beginning, and let's open up the Dolby Atmos Renderer over here. As you can see, we have different binaural metadata modes. Now, I know that for anything that's left and right, I don't want that touched. If I've left something in the left and right, there's a reason for that. For the center, I'm going to start off with near, and we're going to see how that sounds. The low frequency effect, there is no binaural metadata mode for that. Okay, for left surrounds and right surrounds, I'm going to start these off as near because they are actually close to me. And then my left rear surrounds and right rear surrounds, I'm going to adjust these right over here. And then for these, for all of all of my tops, for starters, let's do, hold down Command. We're going to click all of these. For all of these, I'm tempted to set them to far, but that might be too much. So this is going to be the start of what our bed sounds like. And basically, I think a good way to kind of demonstrate this would be just to play the mix in its entirety. Maybe we'll start from a chorus, and we'll see how everything sounds. Okay, that's sounding good to me. What I might do though is I might actually toggle between the main mix, the reference, the stereo master, and this while I'm doing it. Okay, I'm gonna leave that exactly as it is for now. So now we're just gonna go through each one of these individual ones and we're gonna check them out. So let's start off with the keys. I love the fact that I can solo the actual tracks directly from within here. It makes it a little bit easier. Here's off. Let's set both of these, just for now, let's set both of these to near. So the organ and the keys. And in terms of where these are sitting on our actual mix, if we scroll back over here, so we'll play both of these. And I'm going to try to find a place where they're both playing together. Okay, so we'll come in this one. And this one here, let me deselect this solo from within the renderer. Okay, let's change them both to mid. I'm going to change this one to mid and this one. Okay, I don't like it on far. I think we're going to stick with mid for these. Okay, now let's go to the electric. I will go into, it's track 46 over here. So we'll solo this out. Okay, I'm just going to make a decision and go with near for now. And it is important to note that anything I'm doing here, this only pertains to the Dolby Atmos binaural rendering, the Dolby Atmos binaural mix. It doesn't get applied to the 7.1.4 and it doesn't get applied for Apple Spatial Audio. Okay, so for this one over here, which is track 47, I'm going to actually, let's unsolo in Studio One and let's solo from within here. So for track 47, okay, so for both of these, I can change them to off. There's quite a big difference and quite a big change. I'm going to leave these set to off. And now for the cleans, let's see what these both sound like. And if I want to make any selections to both of these, we can do that just by holding Shift. And I'm going to move down a little bit. I need to find a place where this one is playing. And also where this one. And I want to make sure that I'm looking at the actual right track. So these are 48 and 49. So track 48 and track 49. So we'll play from here and then here. Okay, let me go back into the renderer and I'm going to take these out of solo mode. Next up, let's take a look at crowd noise. I think mid didn't sound too bad when I was listening to that. We just did that nice automation move. So let's scroll down to our crowd noise that we have. Where is it? Right over here. And we'll make a selection. Go to the beginning. Okay. That doesn't sound that bad to me. So I think now we have some basic metadata set. Let's take a listen to, for example, the verse going into the chorus.
QMP, long live the kingfish, still #1 today. Got a new one, Baton Rouge born, call him Bobby J.
Okay. This is the interesting thing about working on headphones, because I immediately hear that the quarter note delay that we added, it might be the print track, is just too much. So let's come in from here.
Got a new one, Baton Rouge born, call him Bobby J. Kathleen was first lady, sweet as she can double B.
Okay, so here's the question now. Is it too much or is it just too loud? Because it might just be too loud. Because keep in mind, when we split the panning between multiple channels, they stack up and it's changing kind of the balance and the symmetry. So maybe I like it, I just don't like it that loud.
Got a new one, Baton Rouge born. Call him Bobby J. Kathleen was first lady. Sweet as she can double B. Can't forget my main man. Talking about EWE. From UNT to EWE. You know we all.
Okay, perfect. So now what I want to do, now that I'm in general, I'm happy with those metadata modes that I've set in terms of the binaural modes, which get set, and they get set for the bed track. Keep in mind, when you're working with the bed, if you're routing anything with a surround panner, that gets routed directly to the bed. Then all of these settings are shared across the board. So if you have groups of tracks or you have individual tracks that you've routed just left and right or to the side surrounds or whatever the case is, they're all sharing these settings. So it is worth the effort to spend some time in auditioning these ones to see which ones sound the best. I do want to take a listen quickly. I want to go to the horns because keep in mind, we opened up the horns bus, we deactivated the stereo stem, and all of these horns are discretely routed out of different channels. So if we take a look at this, actually, let's open this up in the console. We'll go to the horns. Each one of these are set out to be in discrete channels. So I want to make sure that that binaural information works for those horns. It's not too bright or too abrasive or too roomy. Now, because we have still our stereo stem, if I Alt Option solo this and make sure that the region's not muted, then I've got a really quick and easy way to audition between the two of these. So that's the stereo stem. It's going out the bed, but keep in mind, if we go to the Dolby Atmos settings, the left and right channel have no binaural mode in terms of like room processing. Nothing applied. So that's as close to the stereo mix as we have. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to toggle from the stereo mix to the folder, which is routed to the bed, which is respecting all the different binaural modes. Okay, that's actually not a bad match. In terms of brightness, though, I do feel like it's a little bit brighter in the stereo. Actually, maybe it's okay. Maybe it was the opposite order I was hearing. Okay, so I'm happy with that. One thing I want to address before we move over to Apple Spatial Audio is if I listen to the impact of the drums. I'm going to go to the chorus here and let's isolate the stereo reference.
You know we ought to love you, 'cause you ran Louisiana the way you should in the time when you were.
Okay, I've got double horns stacked up over here. We forgot to mute the stereo stem. Apologies for that. Let's listen one more time. I'm listening for the brightness and the punch of the drums specifically, and the bass.
You know we ought to love you, 'cause you ran Louisiana the way you should in the time when you were.
I think we can brighten up our drums a little bit, if I'm being honest. It doesn't have to be too much. And the thing to take note of with our drums is they are sitting on a folder. And we are basically, we widen them a little bit, but not too much, so that we can actually really use whatever we want, because this is just stereo. So let me.
You know we ought to love you, 'cause you ran Louisiana the way you should in the time when you were. The governor.
So a small minor correction on the drums.
You know we ought to love you, 'cause you ran Louisiana the way you should.
Okay, I feel like we're not losing a lot of power or anything like that. Now, keep in mind, we had that, what was it? It was a back CQ across the whole entire mix, and I was doing a little bit of a push at like 7K and 74 Hertz. So I was basically giving it a smile. So arguably, if anything sounds a little dull or not bright enough or whatever the case is, then we can do things on a case-by-case basis. I'm not going to overly obsess about this at the moment, though. I think that's pretty good in terms of where we're sitting. There's nothing really that sounds like it's drastically different. I do want to open up my notes to make sure that I'm not missing anything. So we did our crowd effects, we did our automation, our additional background vocals, brightening up the drums, adjusting VCA masters. At this point, if I'm hearing anything that's like drastically different between my actual Dolby Atmos mix, which we can hear by just playing from anywhere, and then soloing the stereo mix.
Baton Rouge, if nothing else, what you wanna be is the governor.
If anything, maybe my drums are a little bit too loud now. I'm not too worried about that though. So if anything is drastically different, we can readjust them. And a really great way to be able to do that is we have our VCA masters, which are available on my fader port here. If I toggle between the stereo and something is jumping out too much, like for example, maybe the horns were jumping out a little bit too much, I can pull those back and everything. The one thing to make note of though is that that is something that's standing out on the headphones, but that is not necessarily something I heard at all in my room. So that is working with the Dolby Atmos binaural headphone rendering mode, and that is adjusted by clicking the wrench icon and choosing the option to enable additional headphone output. And then in terms of the output format, we're listening to binaural. Really quickly though, I just want to make note of the fact that if you wanted to listen to your whole Atmos mix and you want to fold it down or crash it down into stereo, we can do that directly from within here. So here, let's listen to the binaural.
Baton Rouge, if nothing else, what you wanna be is the governor.
Let's go to stereo. Okay, now let's listen from here.
And get my main man talking about EWE. From UNT to EWE, you know we ought to love you, 'cause you ran Louisiana the way you...
Okay, we are hearing a big low-end bass increase, but keep in mind, when you're listening to the Dolby Atmos binaural, the LFE send that we adjusted right over here, we can completely hear this when we're listening to the binaural. See these? Arguably, this maybe is a little bit too loud, so maybe let's bring this down. Bring it down about 5 dB. Because I'm hearing a big difference between everything. Now, the last thing I'm going to do before we move over to Apple Spatial Audio is I'm going to go to the stereo, and now I'm going to toggle the stereo fold down of the Dolby Atmos mix that we're listening to against the stereo reference. And keep in mind, this is very important, that when we're doing this, our direct render settings, we're on direct render, and our manual trimming, we don't have any trimming going on. So all this stuff comes into play in terms of how things are folding down.
And get my main man talking about EWE. From UNT to EWE, you know we ought to love you, 'cause you ran Louisiana the way you should at the time when you were the governor, the governor, the governor.
I am hearing a slight difference in the drums. I'm not going to worry about it too much though at this point. So the idea is simple. I've kind of balanced it out on the 7.1.4 mains. Now I'm hopping over to headphones. I'm giving a completely different perspective. The interesting thing is I've already made a couple adjustments which I feel like are for the better. Like for example, I noticed over headphones when listening to the binaural that my LFE was adding a little bit too much. So that's something for me to take into consideration. Now what I'm going to do though is we're going to make a change here. So instead of monitoring through the Dolby Atmos binaural mode, the renderer that's natively integrated, here's what we're going to do. If you deselect the additional headphone output, give this a moment, take a look at what happens over here. Our output format changes, and now we have two new options open. I'm going to enable Apple Spatial Audio.